Chapter 2382. In the next second, Dashan's eyes suddenly widened, and the anger in his heart burned. "Presumptuous!" he roared. "I, Dashan, have made many achievements in my life. How could I kneel to someone like you?" In his eyes, he had always had a high status since he was a child. In his eyes, all women were just playthings. However, the girl in front of him who had awakened an ability was just the daughter of someone who didn't even deserve to be a plaything. How could he allow himself to kneel to such a person? No. Absolutely not. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Mr. Dashan is still talking like a high and mighty leader. Luo Qingchen pointed to the wall of fire that was about to dissipate and said, "Either kneel or die, choose quickly." When she said this, she could completely feel her own blood surging in her heart. Why did she come to the Century Square? It was to completely crush the Bai family before any of them awakened an ability. Even if she didn't awaken a fire ability, it was enough to make them fall into such a humiliating situation. At this moment, even the word happy couldn't describe her mood very well. How could the word happy be enough? "Dad, save Xinshin." Bai Lianxin looked at her father standing straight in the same place, his hands clenched, and his whole body trembling. Her heart sank and she bit her lips and said, "Save me." In fact, suddenly, in addition to feeling panic, she also felt a chill in her heart. Since she was a child, her father had always been high and mighty. He wanted a son, an heir. But even so, he still held her in the palm of his hand and protected her. Whatever she wanted, as long as it didn't violate the so-called Dashan's principle, her father would agree. But if this principle was violated, she wouldn't be able to get a promise no matter what. At this time, to let him kneel to Luo Qingchen, it must be a violation of the principle in his eyes. So Bai Lianxin was very afraid that he wouldn't save her, afraid that he wouldn't kneel in the next second, when the wall of fire faintly dissipated, when the burned and tortured zombies entered a more violent state, when they bared their fangs and brandished their claws towards Bai Lianxin. With a thud, Dashan fell to his knees. Dirty blood appeared on his expensive suit. Luo Qingchen waved her right hand gently, and the wall of fire burned again, making crackling sounds. The zombies that were originally rushing towards Bai Lianxin quickly turned into ashes, and the blue crystal nucleus fell into her hands. Qian Sinai, who was standing on the side watching the play, didn't forget to say with a smile, "You're very different from what I imagined." "What do you imagine me to be like?" Luo Qingchen chuckled. "Gentle, kind, and responsible for saving the world." Qian Sinai saw her proud appearance and couldn't help saying with a gentle smile, "At least you're not that black-bellied." She actually called her black-bellied. If it weren't for the fact that the Bai family was so despicable, she wouldn't even bother with vulgar mortals like them. "That's how black-bellied I am." Luo Qingchen snorted and admitted everything. Qian Sinai seriously looked at her and said, "I like it that much." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 70%. To be honest, she didn't know if she was really black-bellied or not. But she was certain that Qian Sinai liked black-bellied girls. Chapter 2383. Is this enough? Dashan saw him deal with the zombie closest to Bai Lianxin and immediately stood up. He wasn't willing to kneel to someone like Luo Qingchen for a second longer. "You're up quite quickly." Luo Qingchen pointed at the other zombies that were still searching for their sense. "Could it be that you want to deal with them yourself? What else do you want?" Dashan's face turned red and black with anger. His patience with Luo Qingchen had already reached its limit. If he wasn't trapped, even in the apocalypse, how could a person with his status be bullied like this? "Do you want me to say it one by one, or do you want me to say it all at once?" Luo Qingchen's voice was filled with provocation as a playful smile appeared in her eyes. Qian Sinai leaned against the wall of the supermarket with his hands in his pockets, looking at her with a look of appreciation. She really was the kind of girl that people couldn't look away from the more they came in contact with her. It was like no matter where she was, as long as she said a word, she would be the center of attention and no one could overshadow her. That person called by Lianxin always thought that she was a high and mighty princess, but she was no different from a passerby in his eyes. Perhaps it was because of the comparison in his heart. His eyes inadvertently fell on Bai Lianxin's body and happened to meet her eyes. Bai Lianxin was stunned. She looked at Qian Xinai's deep as ink eyes and her heart couldn't help beating faster. This young man was really good-looking. His eyes were like the stars, his nose was tall, and his lips were thin. Adding in the black windbreaker, he gave off an ice-cold aura that made him seem even more noble. He was like a prince in the apocalypse, attracting people's gazes. Luo Qingchen, you're so aggressive to make an elder kneel to you. Do you really not feel shame? Bai Lianxin knew that she was at a disadvantage in forcefully rebuking, so she changed her method. She sniffed twice before holding her chest with her right hand. You made me kneel, for all these people's lives I kneeled. You asked my father to kneel, and for the sake of my life, he also kneeled. We are not giving in. We just want to save more people. As soon as her voice fell, seeing that Luo Qingchen didn't respond, she looked at Qian Xinai and said, She is this kind of person, do you still want to stand on her side? Bai Lianxin thought that this move of hers was very smart. On one hand, she could show her kindness and on the other hand, she could win over Qian Xinai. She spoke with a sobbing voice, just like a good girl who was upholding justice. At this moment, Luo Qingchen was playing the role of a villain who didn't care about the lives of others, didn't respect her elders, and didn't even have the most basic professional ethics. Yes. Young lady, don't be like this. Take us out of here. Too many people have already died. No matter what grudges there are, it's already the end of the world. Just let it go. Everyone's voices rang out again, but this time, their voices were lowered. After all, there were still several zombies in the supermarket, but because of the power users' auras, they couldn't find them. But these weak humans, they were even more cowardly and timid when facing life and death. They always stood on the moral high ground, asking others to be kind and forgiving. Chapter 2384. Pa Luo Qingchen clapped her hands and revealed a taunting smile. I think you're right this time. Qian Xinai seemed to have thought of something as he didn't forget to look in Bai Lianxin's direction with a cold snort. I think it's better if I answer your question. He paused before looking at Luo Qingchen. I'll always stand by her side. Perhaps it was because the sound was too close together, the remaining zombies found the scent of blood near the shelves and charged at them. At this time, one of the shelves fell down and there was a fat auntie who had just said, Let the apocalypse go. A zombie noticed the woman's position and pounced on her, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The auntie came out of the shelf in fear and grabbed a person, using her strength to push that person in the direction of the zombie. That person's neck was bitten by the zombie, and her eyes rolled back as her body unconsciously twitched. As for the auntie, she was running frantically. She could only see Bai Lianxin. In the blink of an eye, she grabbed Bai Lianxin again and was about to push her over as well. Bai Lianxin took a step back and used the shelf to block the auntie's path. Like this, the fat auntie was bitten by the zombie and fell down. Silence, silence, silence. There was a deathly silence in the air. No one dared to say a word. After all, they always thought that there were two power users in this supermarket. No matter what, they would save them. After all, the zombies could be easily taken care of by them, but they never would have thought that the zombies would bite a person to death in front of them and then bite a second one to death. But they were still indifferent. Suddenly, they seemed to understand what kind of situation they were in. They even felt annoyed that they were licking Bai Lianxin. After all, they were licking the wrong person. How about it, Bai Dashan, have you thought it through? Luo Qingchen shrugged. Do you want to listen to my conditions one by one or all at once? Bai Dashan was so angry that his eyes rolled back a bit. He quickly took out a pill from his pocket and swallowed it. After moving to a relatively safe position, he said, "Tell me everything." He might have been a bit arrogant before, but after kneeling and seeing two people being bitten to death by zombies at such a close distance, he had to admit it. He had to admit that he needed Luo Qingchen. Because he didn't want to die. He didn't want to die in this dirty place with these people with no status. 2 conditions. First, I want that child. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes and raised her right hand. The flames condensed into a wall that blocked the path of the zombies. She pointed to Yi Qinghuan, who was hiding in the innermost area, and putting the baby in front of her to protect her. Put it in this position. After all, it was her mother's child. It was her duty to save him if she could. Yi Qinghuan was stunned for a moment. She rolled her eyes with disdain and sneered, "I don't care." Seeing that the zombie was blocked, she walked to the position Luo Qingchen said, and threw the baby on the ground in disgust. She didn't like the child. If she could give birth to a son, the nanny wouldn't have had the chance to take care of him. She was full of disgust at the sight of her son. Now that the apocalypse was coming, she was even more unwilling to take this burden with her. Chapter 2385. Since so many people like to stand on the moral high ground and take pride in forgiveness and kindness, why not go with the flow and make everything seem so natural? She's not their parent, so there's no need to save them. One person's life in exchange for everyone's life. Between the choice of life and death, she really wants to see what the people who were just kneeling to the Bai family will choose. Luo Qingchen, you're crazy. Bai Dashan's face that was originally red with anger gradually turned pale. At this moment, he knew that since Luo Qingchen said the conditions, then today, one of the 3 of them must die here. He can't die. Bai Lianxin blinked in panic, her eyes falling on the baby boy not far away. In the next second, she once again had a bad idea and rushed in the direction of her half-brother. In such a situation, they can only compete with her if they have a bargaining chip in their hand. Little did she know that the moment she touched the baby boy, a golden light suddenly appeared, like a protective circle that completely protected the baby boy. Surrounded by the golden liguang, Luo Qingchen slowly raised her right hand, the exquisite ring shimmering. It seems that you think that choosing one of the 3 is too kind? Her cold eyes narrowed, her beautiful eyes filled with coldness as she looked at them and said, "Why don't you choose 2 out of the 3? In just a moment, the 3 Bai family members looked at each other. This look was like the last exchange at the gates of hell. "I'll give you 10 seconds. Luo Qingchen sneered and continued, "If you haven't awakened, then I and classmate Qian will go first." As soon as this statement came out, the silent crowd in the distance suddenly exploded. When Luo Qingchen said that she would take everyone away, they all felt a sense of relief. After all, the people in the 3 choices didn't include them, so naturally, they could show a state of indifference. But, at this moment, they seemed to have recovered. If the Bai family didn't choose, they might stay here forever. Now that the revolving door was broken, they were basically waiting for death. I say, Mr. Bai, hurry up and make a decision. Although it's not very nice to say this, it's better for one person to die than so many. That's right. It's not easy to survive in this apocalyptic world. Why don't we ascend to paradise as soon as possible? As a father, I don't think you want your wife and child to leave you. If you were exchanging a life for a life, you wouldn't need to make a sacrifice, but you're exchanging a life for many lives. The moment Luo Qingchen's voice fell, Bai Dashan heard all the chatter. He clenched his fists, his heart thumping as he made his final decision. Should he sacrifice his wife Yi Qinghuan or his daughter Bai Lianxin? If he lost his wife, he could remarry. He didn't have much feelings for Yi Qinghuan. He was not used to having a lover. Even if he had children, it was just a routine thing. Therefore, Yi Qinghuan's presence or absence didn't affect him much. As for his daughter, Bai Lianxin, in fact, even if he lost her, it didn't matter. He still had a son, and this son's sister was a paranormal, so she could be a good talisman for him in the apocalypse. It seemed that he could sacrifice anyone, except for him. Chapter 2386. Dad. Bai Lianxin was knocked into a corner by the power of the exquisite ring. She found that her ankle was in great pain. She was afraid that she would be left behind. She didn't want to die. She was only 18 years old this year, she still had a lot of youth. There were so many people in this world who liked her. So many people regarded her as a goddess in their hearts. How could she die? Moreover, ability users would continue to appear. If she awakened an ability, she would definitely become a goddess. So, she couldn't die. She absolutely couldn't die. Bai Dashan looked at his daughter's eyes that longed to live. His heart couldn't help but tighten. After all, she was his own flesh and blood. If he didn't have to choose, he would rather have 1,000 or 10,000 unrelated people die than let the Bai family suffer even the slightest bit of harm. But there was no other way, there really was no other way. 3, 2, 1. In this tense atmosphere, Luo Qingchen didn't forget to count down for the Bai family. On the border of life and death, she only gave them 10 seconds to choose. To be honest, she felt that she was two-faced. But so what? Facing the enemy, if she was soft, she would be like the original owner. She wouldn't even have the chance to make a choice. So it seemed that she was already very benevolent. Bai Dashan firmly bit his lip. His eyes fell on Bai Lianxin's ankle. His deep eyes flashed with a sharp light as he said, "I choose my daughter." No. Bai Lianxin heard this and crazily shook her head. "I don't want Dad. I'm only 18 years old. You and Mom have already lived long enough. Why choose me?" No one would have thought that the well-mannered young lady would actually say such disgraceful words. As a child, saying such words in this kind of situation was very ironic. Bai Dashan frowned and didn't say anything. He already had a son as his heir. A mountain couldn't have two tigers. Moreover, they didn't have the same mother. Adding on Bai Lianxin's injury to her foot, even if she survived, she might not be able to walk out. If she wasn't injured, perhaps he would choose his wife. Cough, cough. Luo Qingchen cleared her throat, and the bright red flame lingered on her fingertips. She sneered and looked at Bai Lianxin. "It seems that you have made your choice. Then it's decided." "No, no, 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 no." Bai Lianxin's face was as pale as paper. She shook her head crazily and said, "Luo Qingchen, you only said that one of us has to die here, but you didn't say who can decide." She screamed at the top of her lungs, her lips trembling non-stop, fighting for the last glimmer of hope. Even if Bai Dashan was her father, he had no right to make decisions for her in matters of life and death. Since the family was heartless, then she would be unrighteous. "I have to live, I have to live, I have to live." She told herself over and over again that she had to survive. Zi. Luo Qingchen pretended to be enlightened. She crossed her arms and revealed a thoughtful expression. "What you said isn't without reason." Qing. After that, Qian Sinai, who had been standing on the side with a smile the entire time, suddenly called out her name in a very ambiguous manner. Luo Qingchen turned over and met his focused eyes. He elegantly narrowed his eyes, but he revealed a black-bellied smile as he said, "How about we count to 3 and let them choose at the same time? The one with the most votes will leave their life behind. What do you think?" Chapter 2387. When Bai Lianxin heard Qian Sinai's suggestion, it was like she felt the hope of life. It was like she was drowning in the deep sea, and was about to drown, grabbing onto a life-saving straw. "Although you didn't ask for my permission to call me Qing. But..." Luo Qingchen proudly looked up and said, "I have to say, I agree with your suggestion." Only this would make her feel black-bellied. Letting her watch the Bai family kill each other was her original intention. It didn't go against her original intention at all. Qian Sinai slightly raised his brows and said with a faint smile, "Qing sounds good." There was a very warm feeling, like he had called her this at a certain time in a certain place. So familiar, from beginning to end, Yi Qinghuan had been curled up in the corner without saying a word. Until Luo Qingchen agreed with Qian Xinai's suggestion, she was the first to speak. I agree. Bai Dashan and Bai Lianxin looked at her at the same time, as if they were sending her a message, but she didn't look back at anyone. If the other two don't have any objections, I'll start counting. Luo Qingchen played with her fingers as a dark aura came from her body. It was like other people's lives were just a dramatic performance in front of her. She didn't care, so she could use such a relaxed way to watch the three of them choose life and death. The contrast between the two extremes was even more ironic. Agree. Agree. At this moment, the father and daughter who had pushed each other into hell had a tacit understanding. 3, 2, 1. As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingchen suddenly looked up and said, "Choose." The people who were watching the show all took a cold breath when they saw this very dramatic scene. Bai Dashan and Bai Lianxin pointed at each other at the same time, while Yi Qinghuan pointed at herself. "Mom," Bai Lianxin said in a trembling voice as she bit her lip, "what are you doing? He went to bed with another woman and let your daughter die. Why don't you choose him?" Her mother would always be her mother, but her father wasn't just her father. Bai Dashan's words made her completely understand that in front of life and death, for Bai Dashan, his own life was the most important. He could sacrifice anyone, even if it was his daughter, even if it was his wife. "Don't worry." Seeing this scene, Luo Qingchen felt it was more interesting. She shrugged her shoulders and continued, "I can give you one more chance to choose again. But," she continued to say, "if you three people's choice, perhaps you're destined to die and become a family, then I should fulfill's goodwill, don't you think so?" Saying this, to say to you twos to s was? But Yi Qinghuan she was Qing. To her to her to her to her to perhaps, there was nothing sadder than a dead heart. The walls of fire around the zombies gradually disappeared, but before she could make a move, Qian Xinai's slender fingers moved slightly and a thick ice wall appeared in front of the zombies. This sudden change in temperature caused everyone present to shiver involuntarily. Chapter 2388. Luo Qingchen chuckled, the corner of her mouth outlined a very faint smile, and began to count down. When the word 1 came out, Bai Dashan and Bai Lianxin pointed at Yi Qinghuan at the same time, and Yi Qinghuan pointed at herself this time. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air again. There were some murmurs among them, and this time Luo Qingchen actually felt that they were right. After all, a woman's heart is soft. I feel the greatness of a mother's love. I feel different from you. One of the onlookers said, "The blood in the bones of the Bai family is cold. They have the same blood, so they make the same choice in a moment of life and death." Luo Qingchen thought that Yi Qinghuan would say something long like a clown like Bai Dashan and Bai Lianxin just now. But in the end, she only said one sentence. "If there is an afterlife, I must not meet you." As soon as her voice fell, she pounced on the zombies behind the ice wall without saying a word. She was also greedy for life. She actually didn't want to die. She also knew that she was not a good person. She could frame others for her own interests and even disregard the lives of others. But when she heard Luo Qingchen's countdown, when death was approaching her step by step, she was stunned. She suddenly remembered the scene when she first met Bai Dashan. At that time, he was a rich man's son, and there were many women around him. But after meeting her, he resolutely decided to marry her, even if she was not a rich man's daughter, even if they were not well matched. But he gave her the best quality of life. At that time, she felt that she was an ugly duckling turned into a white swan. Everything was so beautiful. Later, she got pregnant and gave birth to a little princess. They did their best to love her and gave her the best of everything. If she was born in ancient times, she would be a rich man's daughter that everyone envied. But over time, being a rich lady who was revered by everyone made her vain. Bai Dashan's career became busier and busier, and his status became higher and higher. He began to go out early and come back late. Sometimes he even didn't come back. Marriage was a gamble, and she had lost. Once upon a time, she had always thought that if she gave birth to a son for him, she would be able to turn the tables. However, the appearance of the nanny made her realize that she didn't even have a chance to turn the tables. Although Bai Dashan only recognized his son and not his nanny, she knew that her role in this marriage was no longer irreplaceable. Anyone could replace her. It was just a matter of time. "Mommy, don't!" Bai Lianxin screamed at the top of her lungs. She didn't want to die, but she also didn't want her mother to leave her. When she was young, she had braided her hair, told her stories, and put on dresses for her. At this moment, the scenes became incomparably clear. She, who had always thought of herself as noble and virtuous, found that her heart had fallen to the bottom of the valley. She cried so loudly, like a little girl who had been abandoned. There was no going back to the way it used to be. As for Bai Dashan, Luo Qingchen looked into his eyes, and a touch of Liguang flashed through her deep eyes. Although his expression didn't change at all, Luo Qingchen knew that he was suppressing his emotions. Yi Qinghuan's sacrifice would make them feel even more uncomfortable. That kind of discomfort was not the humiliation on the surface, but the stabbing pain in the depths of their hearts. When Luo Qingchen saw that the Bai family had such feelings, she felt even more happy. Chapter 2389. The zombies swallowed Yi Qinghuan's body, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. With a "kacha" sound, her neck was bitten off by the zombies and her beautiful eyes suddenly turned white. Dida dida dida, with the sound of blood dripping down, she fell down. After a while, he straightened his body. Her neck had been bitten, and there was only a thin bone connecting her head to her body. When the smell of blood filled the small space, the zombies outside the revolving door began to wildly charge in. Luo Qingchen and Qian Sinai looked at each other before putting up a wall of fire and an ice wall at the same time. The moment the ice and fire touched, there was a zzz sound and a brilliant spark appeared in front of them. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and was about to charge into the zombies to kill them when the temperature in the air suddenly dropped and there was a touch of frost that appeared on Qian Sinai's face. He suddenly came behind her and held her shoulders with both hands as he seriously looked into her eyes. "Qing Qing, it's been hard on you just now. You should let me do the physical work of killing zombies." Luo Qingchen heard this and was a bit surprised. She suddenly felt like she was being pampered by the male lead. This kind of feeling, the more dangerous the moment, the more seductive the action was, the more it would be remembered. She raised her brows and said, "Let's watch your performance." Actually, she wasn't too clear on how the power rankings were calculated. But properly speaking, the ice and water powers should be on par with the fire powers, but there was one thing that the fire powers couldn't compare to. That was the creation of water. In the middle of the apocalypse, all the water sources had been polluted. Once the blood of zombies mixed with water, it would become poisonous and mutated. This was also the reason why she had collected so many water sources before the apocalypse. A bottle of water would be more expensive than a carat diamond in the future. As for fire, everyone should know the simple truth of drilling wood to make fire. Fire wasn't something that couldn't be lacking in the apocalypse. At that time, a few zombies swarmed in. When they fell one by one around the ice wall, when the light blue crystal nuclei danced in the air, Qian Sinai was wearing a black windbreaker, quickly moving through the zombies as a faint blue glow surrounded his fingertip. To be honest, Qian Sinai looked really good at this moment. It was a kind of casual standing and his body was glowing. Except for the zombies that were running away in panic, the rest were all frozen into ice and shattered into pieces with a loud bang. The entire floor was covered in glittering and translucent ice. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that the frozen pieces of organs were all over the place. It was a ghastly sight. Bai Lianxin seemed to come back to her senses as her peach blossom eyes looked right at Qian Sinai. All of a sudden, her heart was filled with regret. Why didn't she notice his excellence when they were classmates? If she had noticed him earlier and let him become her protector, she wouldn't have had such a miserable life in the apocalypse. Even his own mother was killed by Luo Qingchen. Right. In her eyes, her mother wasn't killed by zombies, but rather by Luo Qingchen. She hated him. It was a kind of bone-deep hatred that would never dissipate. She had to change, she had to obtain such an excellent man. Chapter 2390. After Qian Sinai took care of all the zombies, Luo Qingchen spent a bit of time collecting the resources in the supermarket. There weren't many useful resources left. The packaged food could still be eaten, but once things like blankets were stained with blood. It wasn't a problem of infection, but rather there was no water to wash blankets in the apocalypse. The onlookers saw Luo Qingchen casually pick up a large bag and throw anything she found useful into it. But what surprised them was that no matter how many things Luo Qingchen threw in, the bag never seemed to be full. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay before copying Luo Qingchen and picking up the same large bag, crazily stuffing things into it. But it seemed like after stuffing a few things in, their bags were full. They were naturally confused, but no one dared to ask Luo Qingchen. After all, everything she did just now had made them feel an inexplicable fear. No one dared to stand on the moral high ground and criticize her. No one even dared to say no to her. Luo Qingchen quite liked this feeling. She hated those people who said, if it didn't happen to them, they would always be saints. This kind of person wasn't as kind as they thought. For example, the woman who slit her throat. For example, the man who just said forget it. When the same thing happened to someone else, everyone could come up with a set of grand excuses. But once it happened to them, they would use their actions to tell you. What did it have to do with him? After organizing her things, she found that Lianxin was limping towards Qian Sinai. She lowered her head and whispered something, but she didn't hear it clearly. But she was certain that Qian Sinai's eyes were on her. Luo Qingchen could clearly feel that he narrowed his eyes and even curled his lips. She thought in her heart, damn little white flower. It seemed like she was prepared to make a move against her great male lead. Over. Really? It was probably because the scene of Qian Sinai killing zombies with his bare hands had dazzled Lianxin's eyes. Even when they left the Century Square, she silently followed them without a single word of complaint. Men liked weak women, only then would they have the desire to protect them. She felt that even Qian Sinai was no exception. Although she didn't know how he and Luo Qingchen met, they didn't have much interaction when they were in school. Their feelings for each other wasn't deep, so she definitely had a chance. Qian Sinai left the Century Square with them, and Luo Qingchen kept an eye on the Bai family. Yi Qinghuan's tragic death was only the beginning, it wasn't the end. But if they didn't die in despair, how could they be worthy of her allowing them to live for so long? The sky reads S. Although it's. But what was even more terrifying was that the surrounding temperature was even lower. It felt like it was 30 to 40 degrees below zero. Luo Qingchen didn't feel cold, but she could feel that the people around her couldn't help shivering. Miss Luo, how about we find a place to rest? One of the Andes came up and looked at her. It's too cold, how about we find a store and get a few jackets? Chapter 2391. Luo Qingchen shrugged and calmly said, we've already left Century Square. You can go wherever you want, there's no need to follow me. In an instant, the people standing in the back suddenly refuted. Please, Auntie, if you want to leave then leave, can you not talk so much? Seriously. If you want to die, don't drag us down, alright? I'm not home yet. Me too. My mom is still waiting for me at home. I have to go back quickly. In fact, Luo Qingchen understood what these people meant. They probably wanted her, an ability user, to escort each of them to a safe place. To be reasonable, were their brains damaged? I don't think there's anything wrong with this auntie's words. Luo Qingchen looked at Bai Dashan, who was desperately making a call. His brows were tightly knit and his deep eyes made it hard for people to see through him. Luo Qingchen naturally knew that he wanted to leave her quickly. She had just sent Yi Qinghuan to hell a second ago, but now he had to go with her. Why? Because they were surrounded by zombies. If they left her, they would only die faster. Thank you, Miss Luo. There was a small clinic not far away. The glass at the door wasn't broken, and there was a simple notice on it. Hokkaido tourism is closed for a week. No wonder this shop looked so different from the shops next to it that were full of glass shards and blood. It looked so clean. Luo Qingchen gently raised her right hand, wanting to use her fire powers to burn the lock, but it was no use. This lock seemed to be heat-resistant. Qian Sinai walked over to her side and slowly picked up the lock in her hand. He took out a needle from somewhere and inserted it into the lock, turning it a few times before the lock fell off. This lock-picking is a bit casual. Luo Qingchen shrugged and looked at Qian Sinai with a bit of appreciation. He didn't care as he pushed open the door. I just opened it casually. Why did it seem like he was being modest, but it felt like he was showing off? Speaking of which, she seemed to slowly understand Qian Sinai after getting along with him. On the surface, he seemed very cold, but in reality, he had an inexplicable black-bellied physique. Not only did he not feel that what Luo Qingchen did was excessive, but he always looked at her with deep meaning and approved of her actions. There was definitely a little devil living in her heart. When they entered the room, many people's legs turned to jelly. The average temperature difference was about 20 to 30 degrees. The cold at the end of the world was very strange. There was no rain, no snow, no hail, just pure cold. This kind of coldness could not be dissipated by evaporation, so the temperature would become lower and lower. Grumble, grumble. A rumbling sound came from his stomach. Everyone looked over and saw that it was the voice of an 8-year-old girl. There was a big black bag in his mother's hand. Inside it was the food that she had just plundered from the supermarket. Are you hungry? The woman took out a small biscuit from her backpack and said, "Eat some first. Let's eat together when we find my brother." The girl swallowed her saliva and shook her head. "No. Yu is not hungry. Let's wait until we find little brother before we eat together." The woman hesitated a bit before putting away the biscuit in the end. Their family valued boys and she only had this bit of food. She didn't know how long she could last. Chapter 2392. The little girl didn't say anything as she silently sat on the side holding her stomach, burying her head in her arms. Luo Qingchen knit her brows and wanted to say something, but she was attracted by the sound of the bag being torn open. The sound came from a man who was tearing open a piece of toast. He was eating it in large bites, eating it with the mineral water he had just bought from the supermarket. It was clearly a simple dry meal, one that people who enjoyed a life of luxury wouldn't even want. But at this moment, everyone couldn't help swallowing their saliva. If one didn't eat for a long time, they wouldn't feel hungry in a tense situation, but once they relaxed, whether it was hunger or thirst, they would feel it. This was why people who lasted for 2 to 3 hours in the earthquake couldn't make it to the hospital. Bai Lianxin bit her lip as she touched her empty stomach, feeling regret in her heart. Why didn't she take something from the supermarket? If she gave it to someone else now, wouldn't she be giving it to their goddess? But in the next second, everyone took out food from their backpacks and began eating. Only Bai Lianxin didn't have anything. She didn't even have a bottle of water. Classmate Qian. Bai Lianxin turned and slowly said, "Can I borrow some food from you? When we reach a safe place, I'll return it to you." Her voice was very soft and she looked very weak, wanting to gain Qian Sinai's sympathy. Actually, food was secondary. The most important thing was that she wanted Qian Sinai to remember her. Her actions in the supermarket should have left a bad impression on this youth, but she felt that Luo Qingchen's actions were even more disgusting, all right? She was a murderer, incomparably cruel. Therefore, she thought that Qian Xinai didn't have a good impression of Luo Qingchen. It was just that they were both power users, so they communicated a bit more. Food? Qian Xinai narrowed his eyes and curled his lips into a smile. You asked me in the supermarket if I could take you away alone, didn't I answer you? Hiss. At this moment, Bai Lianxin's face turned pale once more. She never thought that Qian Xinai would say what she secretly said to him in front of everyone. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt an inexplicable fear. Cold sweat trickled down her forehead. But she had to pretend to be calm. She couldn't let Luo Qingchen see her fear. Yes, I forgot about it. Bai Lianxin pursed her lips and pretended to be shy. But the question just now and the answer now are different. I remember that you just told me that your future wife doesn't like you being alone with others. After saying this, Bai Lianxin didn't forget to look in the direction of Luo Qingchen. Sure enough, Luo Qingchen froze in the middle of drinking water. Although she couldn't see her expression clearly, she could feel that Luo Qingchen must be very surprised. Ha! She couldn't help laughing in her heart. This feeling of angering someone was really refreshing. It was impossible for Luo Qingchen to not care about Bai Lianxin at all. After all, she had 70% affection and victory was in sight. She could use her strength and charm to steal the heart of the male lead, reaching the peak of her life. Chapter 2393. C. The crowd took a cold breath as they watched the show and several dozen pairs of eyes fell onto Qian Xinai. There was surprise, displeasure, and malice. This malice naturally came from Bai Lianxin. Luo Qingchen could see the smile on her lips when she looked at her. Bai Lianxin wasn't a fool, she naturally knew that she had to break away from Luo Qingchen. But they hadn't reached a safe place yet, so even if she knew that there was a time bomb by her side, she could only let this time bomb exist. But Qian Xinai was the surprise card in this game. Bai Lianxin thought about it. If she couldn't obtain Qian Xinai's eyes, then it wasn't a bad choice to have them turn against each other. When they were in the supermarket, she could clearly feel that when she came forward to talk to Qian Xinai, Luo Qingchen's eyes were on her. When she heard Qian Xinai's reply, she didn't feel depressed, rather she felt a bit of strange joy. If he had someone he liked, then Luo Qingchen was just a playmate with him. That was all. That's right. Qian Xinai looked up with a faint liguang in his deep eyes. Is there a problem? No. Nothing. Bai Lianxin pretended to be nervous as she shook her head. She was actually very happy, but she lowered her head and pretended to be very guilty as she pursed her lips. Will I invade your privacy by saying this? If so, can you apologize first? It was this pitiful appearance that changed everyone's impression of Bai Lianxin, but she never knew that her fake appearance would never enter Qian Xinai's eyes. I won't be unhappy, but… Qian Xinai heard this and his eyes that were as deep as the sea sparkled. He suddenly looked at Luo Qingchen and said, My future wife might not be happy. At this time, Luo Qingchen was talking to the system. After all, she still hadn't recovered from being called wife. It wasn't until everyone's eyes fell on her that she felt the halo above her head light up again. Commonly known as the female lead halo. What are you looking at me for? Her eyes finally fell onto Qian Xinai, who was closest to her, blinking and blinking. Qian Xinai's eyes were very gentle and suddenly, she seemed to know what he meant. So, you'll be unhappy? From the surface, this was a normal question. But when this sentence was completely immersed in the plot, this simple question turned into a burning question. What? There was a sigh that sounded in her ears. She felt like she had been tricked by Qian Xinai. Was he sure that was a question and not a confession? Of course, other than Luo Qingchen, the most surprised person was Bai Lianxin. She looked at Qian Xinai with eyes of disbelief as her trembling lips stuttered, You. What are you saying? It had to be said, Qian Xinai really was a very special person. According to the normal situation, she would personally go up against the supporting female lead. But Qian Sinai gave her the feeling of you don't need to speak, I'll take care of the supporting female lead. Chapter 2394. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in the apocalypse, Luo Qingchen would have loudly clapped and then said 666 to Qian Sinai. Qian Sinai saw that she didn't speak and his lips curled slightly. There was a dangerous cold glow in his beautiful eyes as he looked at Bai Lianxin and said, "It seems like my future wife isn't that happy." After that, the room that had just warmed up suddenly fell. Bai Lianxin trembled and lowered her head in a panic. She tightly clenched her fists as her heart filled with unwillingness. She never would have thought that Qian Sinai's future wife would be Luo Qingchen. If it was like this, wouldn't all her efforts have been wasted? This sudden drop in temperature was something that Luo Qingchen, who had awakened the fire ability, couldn't take. She pursed her lips into a soft laugh and said, "Classmate Qian, are you certain you're asking me?" "No." He decisively shook his head as he looked at her with deep eyes that were as deep as water. "I'm confessing to you." Qian Sinai thought that she would be scared and hesitate to speak or make a decision. He never thought that she would just give a casual shrug and say with narrowed eyes, "All right, I accept your confession." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 80%. There was a guang-dang sound as a bottle of mineral water fell to the ground. It was the unconsciously frightened action of the bystanders. This was the first time they had seen such a decisive and direct way of confessing and accepting a confession. Other than Bai Lianxin, who didn't dare look up, and Bai Dashan, who kept calling, the others couldn't help giving them a soft clap. Actually, although Luo Qingchen pretended to be calm on the surface, when she was certain that Qian Sinai's future wife was referring to her, her heart was filled with waves. It was a lie to say that she wasn't nervous, but she had to pretend to be calm in this situation. After a few seconds, Qian Sinai finally reacted from the joy of his confession. He suddenly realized that he and the girl in front of him were the same kind of people in some aspects. They were the kind of people who would not hesitate no matter what happened. Emotions were something that should always be kept in the bottom of one's heart. Even if one had to put on a strong front, they had to appear calm and composed. "Thank you for your acceptance." He gently raised his hand, touched her head and said, "Apocalyptic life, please advise me." "No problem." Luo Qingchen smiled and said, "I will protect you. There's no need for that." Qian Sinai's lips curled into a faint smile. The subject of the word protect must be me. Their voices were not loud, but everyone could hear them in the small space. But whether it was Luo Qingchen or Qian Sinai, they didn't care about other people's gazes. After all, in this post-apocalyptic world, those who could see them being lovey-dovey could die in the next second. Suddenly, she felt that this world seemed more real to her. She didn't need to care about other people's gazes and didn't need to be restrained by morals. Whether she saved people or not, it was up to her. Chapter 2395. The one holding him was a 17 or 18-year-old girl named Mu Jin. When she left the supermarket, she took the initiative to find Luo Qingchen to take care of this child. The reason was, she had a little brother who was bitten to death by a zombie and her mother died under the zombie's sharp fangs in order to save her little brother. She had no family in this world and didn't know where to go, so she asked Luo Qingchen if she could take care of her little brother for her. Could she at least take her away from this place? Once she had a place to stay, she would leave. Luo Qingchen agreed to her request because she felt that this girl was very real. In the apocalypse, everyone wanted to live. She was a power user, so it was normal for someone to want to leave the safe zone with her. But at least they wouldn't leave for no reason. This girl named Mu Jin used this method of exchange to make her feel very comfortable. So she was willing to take her away from here, even to the safe zone. "Little brother is good. Don't cry, don't cry." Mu Jin softly patted the baby's back as she said with an anxious look, "Big sister Qingchen, is he hungry? Why is he crying so hard?" Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows, revealing a look of doubt. She really couldn't understand the profound question of why the baby was crying. Qian Xinai slowly stood up and walked over to the baby to look over him. Give him something to eat first, but I don't think he's hungry. Why? Luo Qingchen blinked as she asked this question. Qian Xinai looked at the sky outside and couldn't help knitting his brows. Grandpa said that in the apocalypse, babies are the most sensitive. Because they are connected to two different worlds. I just took a look and he has signs of awakening and ability. As soon as his voice fell, Bai Deshan, who had been texting with his head down, suddenly looked up as a sharp glow appeared in his eyes. If his son was a power user, wouldn't he have nothing to worry about in the apocalypse? This was indeed good news for him, but he had to find a way to steal his son. However, Bai Lianxin, who had her head down and didn't say a word, revealed an unwilling look. Why? It was also Bai Dashan's blood. Why was she not a psychic, but the baby boy was? Why was it that, in the apocalypse, all the halos on her body had disappeared? She, who used to be high and mighty, who used to be called a goddess by her classmates, actually ended up like this. It was all Luo Qingchen's fault. If it wasn't for Luo Qingchen, she definitely would have won Qian Xinai's heart. Even in the post-apocalyptic world, she was still a princess that everyone envied. Damn it. People like Luo Qingchen really deserve to die. So he's going to awaken his special ability? It shouldn't be that fast. Qian Xinai slowly walked to the door and looked at the empty street with knitted brows. He softly said, "His crying might be because there's danger coming." Danger is coming? Luo Qingchen was stunned. What do you mean? Not only Luo Qingchen, when Qian Xinai said this, everyone in the store became nervous. When he was facing so many zombies in the supermarket, this elegant and imposing young man showed a calm and composed appearance. But now, there was clearly nothing around, but the youth's brows were knitted even tighter. Chapter 2396. Qian Xinai's words made everyone take a cold breath, but they immediately understood what he meant. It really was too quiet. If it was said that they didn't meet any zombies when they passed by, that didn't mean that after all this time, there wasn't a single zombie. Other than the sound of the wind outside, there was no sound at all. You mean? Luo Qingchen stood up and put his hands in his pocket. This is a special area? Qian Xinai's beautiful eyes looked up. I think so. So, this is a safe area? The auntie from before asked in an excited voice. Zombies can't come here, right? To be honest, Luo Qingchen didn't want to answer such a stupid question. Could it be that the blood they saw on the way here was chicken blood? Can't you use your brain before asking questions? If I have to explain, it should be that this place is more dangerous than any other place. Luo Qingchen narrowed his cold eyes. Zombies have appeared here before, but there isn't a single zombie here now. This means that the people here are more terrifying than zombies. Correct. Qian Xinai didn't forget to look at Luo Qingchen with a look of appreciation. You really are my future wife. It had to be said, classmate Qian's ability to show off love really was extraordinary. Even in such a dangerous situation, he could still show off his love so naturally. Cuckoo. Luo Qingchen cleared his throat and touched his ear out of habit. Did your grandfather tell you that other than zombies and power users, there are other creatures? There are many other creatures, mutated plants, mutated animals. Qian Xinai paused before saying, but properly speaking, these things can't be stronger than zombies in the early stages of the apocalypse. His eyes narrowed as a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Luo Qingchen could see from his eyes that he should have an idea. Your guess is middle-level zombies. Qian Xinai narrowed his eyes with a bit of doubt. But this is the early stage of the apocalypse. There aren't even that many power users. How could there be middle-level zombies? The mid-level zombies you're talking about are those between level 3 and level 7, right? Yes. They're here? Luo Qingchen was slightly startled. Although she was a psychic, and had her own space ability system, She really wasn't sure if she could beat the so-called mid-level zombies. After all, she was only a C-class ability user. According to the classification of the zombie world, it was impossible for her to beat a mid-level zombie. "Don't worry. I will protect you." As soon as Qian Xinai's voice fell, there was a large gust of wind outside the door. The wind was accompanied by the red light, rolling up layer by layer. The whole air was accompanied by a strange aura. Wasn't this timing a bit too perfect? She had just finished discussing with Qian Xinai when something happened outside the door. If she didn't know that zombies couldn't understand human language, she would have thought that the enemy understood what they were saying and couldn't help attacking them. The onlookers who were watching from the sidelines all retreated. There was a ping sound from the glass door as all the glass shattered and a gust of wind blew in. Chapter 2397. The wind blew, and the murderous aura drowned them. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes as she looked at Qian Xinai standing in the wind. She saw his brows tightly knit as a light blue light surrounded him, falling down layer by layer. In this beautiful scene, they had to face endless danger. "Be careful." Luo Qingchen walked in her direction step by step, trying to hear the surrounding sounds as much as possible. Although the unknown creature hadn't appeared yet, she could clearly feel the powerful aura around them. This aura was an ability that could suppress the present world and gave people a suffocating feeling. Qian Xinai closed his eyes and his ears moved slightly. The surrounding air was very dry and he couldn't use the moisture in the air to condense ice. However, as an ice and water elementalist, if the manipulation of his ability was perfect, he could conjure water and then condense it back into ice. It had to be said, when Luo Qingchen was worried for Qian Xinai, he had already switched to his water ability and instantly condensed it into ice. Kacha, kacha. There was the crisp sound of water condensing into ice. The surrounding temperature seemed to have warmed up a bit. It wasn't as cold as before. But when Luo Qingchen's heart fell to the ground, a shadow as fast as lightning passed by Qian Xinai. All the ice crystals shot out at the shadow, but not a single one hit it. Luo Qingchen and Qian Xinai looked at each other at the same time, tightly knitting their brows. The other side was very strong and there wasn't just one of them. Although Qian Xinai didn't use all his power just now, it was at least 80%. But he couldn't even touch the enemy's clothes. In an instant the ice shattered, it formed a refracted light with the dark red sky, and the refracted light was just enough to make the enemy present himself slightly. Qian Xinai was stunned, being stunned in disbelief for 2 seconds before muttering, "How is this possible? What did you say? Don't come over." He let out a low growl, and his dark eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, even Luo Qingchen was a little scared. This was her first time seeing Qian Xinai like this. Whether it was his silly appearance at school, his calm and mysterious appearance when they first met, or his black-bellied appearance while silently standing by her side. She had never felt so flustered before. An inexplicable feeling of fear arose in her heart. She was afraid that before they had fallen in love, they would be separated by life and death. When this scene flashed in her mind, she quickly flew in Qian Xinai's direction. Although she didn't know what Qian Xinai saw, they were at least 2 of the best power users in the apocalypse. If they worked together, there was no enemy they couldn't deal with. Little did he know that before Luo Qingchen could get close to him, a thick ice wall blocked in front of her. "Be good, don't come over." Qian Xinai's deep eyes had a determined glow as he prepared for battle. If it was an enemy he could deal with, he would be like the one in the supermarket, silently standing behind her. Watching her radiant and black-bellied appearance, he would be her personal knight. But if he felt an aura of absolute danger, he would never let her approach him, not even a little bit. Chapter 2398. When the ice wall blocked in front of her, she saw the determination in his deep-as-ink eyes. He really didn't want her to participate in this battle. This meant that the enemy here was strong enough. But if he was strong enough to kill them, Why didn't he show himself? When doubts filled her mind, several dozen sharp golden lights flew out in Qian Sinai's direction. The other side was very fast and normal people would have to see it clearly, but she still saw it. Zombies! His entire body was covered in armor, and from his face, one could see small pieces of golden red rotting flesh pieced together. Qian Sinai, I see it. Luo Qingchen bit her lip and roared at him through the fridge, it's a zombie. I know. Qian Sinai fell into a bitter battle as he said, but it's not an early-stage low-level zombie. Luo Qingchen knit her brows and used her fire powers to burn the ice wall in front of her. But ice was ice in the end, it couldn't be burned away even if it met fire. Don't go too far, I'll be distracted. Beads of sweat appeared on Qian Sinai's forehead. He used all his strength to resist, but he couldn't suppress the enemy. In the end, the difference in grade was too big, until a golden light pierced his shoulder and blood splashed out. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Qian Sinai! Luo Qingchen called out in surprise. She didn't care about anything else as she took out the Phoenix Dance sword from her storage space and slashed open the ice wall in front of her. She jumped out and blocked the attacks of the armored zombies. Are you all right? It was probably because they were fighting face to face that Luo Qingchen could clearly see the appearance of the armored zombies in front of her. The rotten flesh on their bodies looked like it had been branded by magma, and there was nothing on their faces other than giant teeth. Qian Sinai gave a snort. It's just a small injury, it's fine. Whether it's a big injury or a small one. Luo Qingchen paused for a moment, then took out a medical kit from her portable space and threw it on the ground. Treat your wounds first. Although you're already a psychic, their blood and even weapons will weaken your abilities. Stop playing. Qian Sinai held his shoulder and tightly knit his brows, wanting to stop her from fighting the zombies alone. Little did he know, she lifted her right hand and sealed his thin lips, saying playfully, Don't worry, I'll protect you. Qian Sinai had said the same thing to her before the battle, but she said it to Qian Sinai after the battle. Actually, this kind of feeling was very good. She liked the feeling of the strong working together to defend against an even stronger enemy. After all, in her heart, no one was weak. They were the strongest couple. As soon as her voice fell, she turned around and narrowed her eyes. The hilt of the Phoenix Dance sword was boiling hot and the edge of the sword was glowing red. There were a total of 9 armored zombies around her. Luo Qingchen didn't know their grades, but she knew that these zombies were much stronger than the low-level zombies. Whether it was speed, strength, or intelligence, these zombies were at least several times stronger. She slowly raised her Phoenix Dance sword and a cold glow flashed in her beautiful eyes. According to the words of humans, don't play small tricks if you can fight head-on. Because the result is either you die or I die. Chapter 2399. Honglong dash. As soon as her voice fell, a dazzling dark red lightning flashed in the sky. The surrounding wind blew again, and the ears of several armored zombies lit up with red light. It seemed that someone was controlling them, giving them orders. The next second, 8 of the zombies suddenly disappeared, leaving only the armored zombie standing in the middle. Their speed was very fast, and almost instantly disappeared in front of them. It seems that your brother doesn't want you anymore. Luo Qingchen shrugged and laughed. Suddenly it changed from 1 against 9 to 1 against 1. I'm a bit embarrassed. In fact, this provocation was just for herself to hear. After all, in the apocalypse, the sudden appearance of a powerful enemy would make people feel inexplicably excited. First, challenging the impossible has always been her principle, and second, high-level zombies can give her a higher level of nuclei. Of course, this was under the condition that she was sure she could kill the other party. But the next second, Luo Qingchen's originally confident heart became nervous. Although she didn't show it, but she could clearly feel that her back was covered in cold sweat. It was a deep, mechanical voice that rang in her ears in response to her provocation. I alone am enough to deal with you, God. This zombie can actually understand what she said, and can even respond to it. How could it be? Zombies are new creatures, even if they learn language, how could they be so fast? How could it be before Luo Qingchen could come back to her senses, the zombie wrapped in armor had already attacked her? Its body was abnormal, with small pieces of rotten meat pieced together on its forehead, its neck was glowing with golden light, and its bloody mouth was unusually sharp. Its teeth were different from the teeth of ordinary zombies, and it was twice the size and length of a human's teeth, looking so terrifying. Luo Qingchen saw its attack coming, and dodged to the right, dodging its attack. She had to say, this ugly zombie's speed was really fast. If she hesitated for even 0.1 seconds, it's possible that her neck would be bitten off by its teeth. Hee. The cold laughter came again. Luo Qingchen looked at its bloody mouth moving and said, "Not bad. He had some skills. But the ending won't change. They all have to die. They all have to die." As soon as his voice fell, the red lightning in the sky lit up again, and the deafening sound of thunder rang in her ears. Luo Qingchen was dressed in black with her long hair fluttering in the wind. She held her phoenix dance sword tightly, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. In the next second, the lightning struck straight at her. A deep fissure instantly appeared on the ground, a fissure that was at least 3 meters wide. Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows slightly, feeling inexplicably nervous. At this time, Qian Sinai, who had finished bandaging his wound, stood by her side and said, "How about we make a bet? What are we betting on? If we win, you have to promise me one thing. If we lose, I'll promise you one thing." "Nope." Luo Qingchen decisively shook her head, rejecting this seemingly fair bet that wasn't fair at all. If he lost, what was the use of having 10,000 conditions? Could he cut the queue when he went to report to the King of Hell? Chapter 2400. Why did Qian Sinai seem to want to make a bet today? Did he have to make a bet to fight in peace? Okay. Luo Qingchen said with a shrug, "Deal?" She might lose against 9 armored zombies, but how could she lose against one? If my guesses aren't wrong, Qian Sinai's right hand softly counted, these should be high-level zombies. As for why high-level zombies would appear in the early stages of the apocalypse, he didn't really understand. But they shouldn't be living beings, they should be zombies. If one had to classify these zombies, they might not have evolved naturally, but rather they were artificial intelligent zombies. But that was impossible. It had only been a few days. This kind of zombie shouldn't exist. High level. Luo Qingchen knit her brows. So what level is it? 7? No. Qian Sinai shook his head. It should be a 9th level zombie. Although he wasn't willing to admit it, the light from the zombie's attack was the color of his crystal core. The golden light was the golden crystal core. That was a 9th level zombie. Cuckoo. Luo Qingchen almost couldn't breathe. Was it possible for a C-grade power user like her to fight a 9th level zombie? Does the bet from before still count? Of course it counts. Although Qian Sinai's body was in an extremely tense state, he still said to her with a faint smile, "A gentleman's words cannot be taken back." In an instant, Luo Qingchen's questioning face turned into a cold face, as she replied without any emotion, "Then what's there to say, let's go all out." As soon as her voice fell, she charged at the zombie with the phoenix dance sword in her hand. Qian Sinai followed closely behind. While attacking with his ice wall, he also created layers of protective shields for Luo Qingchen. Both sides fought for close to 30 rounds before Luo Qingchen and Qian Sinai were both injured. This so-called 9th order zombie from Qian Sinai was really too strong. Speed could be made up for with consciousness and strength could be resisted by 2 people, but stamina, the armored zombie, didn't seem to be weakened at all. The speed and strength of his attacks were very accurate. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and her face was a bit pale. She used the phoenix dance sword in her right hand to support herself as she looked at Qian Sinai while panting slightly. This won't do, it'll exhaust us to death. If one's battle prowess had reached a certain level and he would never feel tired, then he would be invincible and invincible. You go first, I'll bring up the rear. Qian Sinai slightly knit his brows. Go find my grandfather and tell him about this situation. I don't want to. Luo Qingqian was very decisive and absolute. She looked at him seriously and said, I won't abandon you. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 90%. After a long time, whenever Qian Sinai thought of these words, he felt a strange warmth in his chest. In this kind of situation, the girl he cared about and liked saying these brave words, how moving was this? Ha 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 ha. There was another terrifying mechanical sound. In an instant, countless golden cannons of light were fired at them. The range of the cannons of light was very large and dense. Even if they had max stamina, they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't hit a single one, not to mention that their stamina had been worn down by the other side. Chapter 2401. The other side was too fast, so fast that Luo Qingqian couldn't react in time. There was a quang dang sound from the phoenix dance sword in her hand, and she was already protected by Qian Sinai. That dark red light flashed in front of her eyes, and there were dark clouds above her head, filling the air with a deathly silence. She looked at Qian Sinai's firm eyes, choosing to protect her without any hesitation at the moment of life and death. Her eyes couldn't help turning a bit red. Before her voice fell, there was a giant sound that rang in her ears, as if there was another powerful force resisting it. Luo Qingqian instantly came back to her senses and jumped out, grabbing the phoenix dance sword in her hand. After stabilizing herself, she saw the white-clothed youth who had taken the fatal blow for them. There was a faint white light around him and his back was to her, looking very familiar. Luo Qingqian felt her heart skip a beat as she said in disbelief, Mian Mian. Peng. A powerful force separated Luo Qingmian from the armored zombie. There were many burnt spots on the armored zombie's body. It lowered its head and pressed a button beside its ear, as a blue light flashed, like it was communicating. Boss found it. Although Luo Qingqian's group didn't hear this, she felt a bit uneasy in her heart. There were too many doubts in her heart, but she didn't feel nervous at all. Little did she know that before she could come back to her senses and think clearly, she was pulled by an unknown force and fell into a warm embrace. It's a good thing you're fine, it's a good thing we made it in time. Luo Qingmian used all his strength to hug her. At this moment, there was an incomparably powerful force in his heart. This was the power of an ability user. Finally, he could fight side by side with his dearest big sister in this world. Finally, he was no longer a burden to her and no longer needed her protection. 3 hours ago, he had strangely fallen asleep in the hotel. There were many scenes in his dream, as the faint white dream covered him layer by layer. He could almost see, no, it wasn't just normal sight, he could see things from a distance through obstacles. His vision was at its peak. At the same time, he found that his hearing was becoming more sensitive. It was like he could clearly hear sounds from far away. The sound of blood dripping on the ground, the cry of a baby, and his big sister's cries. Even if he was several kilometers away, even if there were countless interfering buildings and noises, he could still hear them clearly and accurately. But this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he had seen what was happening half an hour ago. Luo Qingqian being in danger, this dangerous scene had appeared in front of her eyes. He could see the future and think of a way to change it. Actually, he was very clear that he had become incomparably strong. If he didn't guess, he should be a dual ability user. Luo Qingmian Luo's Luo Luo, Luo Luo, Luo Luo Luo. Luo Qingmian let out a long sigh of relief. She let go of her and held her shoulders tightly. She said seriously, I can finally protect you in the future. Chapter 2402. Luo Qingmian was a bit surprised as her eyes fell onto Qian Sinai. Other than feeling the powerful strength coming from Qian Sinai, she could also feel his hostility. Could it be that he was his big sister's admirer? It had to be said, his big sister's eyes weren't bad, but his abilities needed to be evaluated. After all, whether it was the modern world or the apocalypse, only the strong could protect his big sister. Everyone knew that he liked his big sister. This was a kind of love that surpassed family love. When other boys approached his big sister, he would feel strangely unhappy. If the person chasing his big sister wasn't strong enough, it would be better for him to protect his big sister in the apocalypse. But you didn't seem to have fought this zombie before. It was probably because he saw the light again and his vision was magnified. He could see very small things, even the pores on each person's face. But it had to be said, the man who said he could protect his big sister had a good-looking face. He had white and flawless skin, a high nose and thin lip. Especially those eyes that were as deep as ink, it was like he could see through people. In terms of looks, he was a good match for his big sister. But in terms of strength, I like an opponent like you. Qian Sinai narrowed his eyes and his slender fingers had a faint blue glow as he looked at Luo Qingmian. How about we see who can kill this 9th spiritual level zombie first? Agreed. As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingmian charged at the zombie. Mian. Luo Qingchen didn't understand what the two men were talking about, but she saw Luo Qingmian charge at the zombie. She quickly picked up her phoenix dance sword and followed behind her. During this time, this armored zombie seemed to have been communicating with someone, as the blue light beside its ear kept flashing. When Luo Qingmian approached it, it took a step back in a panic before attacking Qian Sinai. Its speed was still very fast, and its strength was still very great. However, with the addition of another person, its offensive and defensive capabilities were clearly much weaker. Luo Qingmian was quite strong after awakening her powers, so there were many fatal attacks on zombies that came from her. Although the zombie was constantly injured during the fight, its healing ability was particularly strong. The damaged rotten flesh would heal in a short period of time, and before it could be attacked, it would be reborn. So strong. Luo Qingmian frowned. If this continues, our stamina won't be able to keep up. He used up our stamina like this before dealing a fatal blow to us. Qian Sinai narrowed his cold eyes. But even if he comes again, I will use my life to protect Luo Qingchen. What about you? This seemed to be a provocation, but it also seemed to be an oath. Qian Sinai wanted to tell this handsome man in front of him who held the girl he liked and didn't let go. He wanted to pursue Luo Qingchen. He had no chance. Me! Luo Qingmian laughed softly. She looked at her sister and said, not only in this life, but in the next life as well. For the first half of his life, it was his sister who protected him all the time. Now that he had arrived at the end of the world, and the heavens allowed him to see the light again, what reason did he have not to protect him? Qian Sinai was a bit surprised as a faint glow appeared in his deep eyes. In the next second, as if he hadn't thought about it, he blurted out a sentence. Chapter 2403. When his voice fell, even he was stunned. He had never heard of this sentence before, but it came out of his mouth so naturally. Luo Qingchen standing on the side trembled and her breathing stopped. Many scenes flashed before her eyes. There was joy, there was pain, there was separation in life, there was separation in death. Mian, stop playing. Luo Qingchen looked up with a faint smile on her lips. You have to believe in your big sister's eyes. Big sister? Qian Sinai was a bit surprised, feeling a strange sense of awkwardness in this dangerous atmosphere. What was this situation? This handsome young man in front of her was actually calling her big sister. Don't be so confused. Luo Qingmian gave a shrug and said with a faint smile, we are blood-related siblings. Although he didn't call her sister on purpose just now, intentionally or otherwise, he wanted this guy to misunderstand. But since his big sister said it, He could only admit it. But it had to be said, when they were fighting side by side, he could feel how strong this man was. He could only be above him. He definitely couldn't be below him. While they were responding to the other party, they were still fighting with the highest level zombie in the apocalypse. Whenever they felt that this monster was about to die, he would always be able to quickly heal the initial wounds and attack them again. Until there was thunder and lightning in the sky again as the armored zombie dealt a fatal blow to them. This long battle of stamina had already made them very tired. Qian Xinai and Luo Qingmian stood in front of Luo Qingchen at the same time, protecting her on the left and right. Qian Xinai looked at Luo Qingmian and said, "Are you ready?" "Of course." Purring. There was a large sound as another force appeared, creating a strong wind. The three of them looked at the red light at the same time. The first one to recognize this person wasn't Luo Qingchen or Qian Xinai, nor was it Luo Qingmian. Rather, it was Bai Lianxin, who had been hiding in the store the entire time. Young Master Jin. Hua Kaijin didn't come alone, there were 2 awakened Hua family bodyguards behind him. After he had settled his family in the safe zone, he came out to search for resources and had already harvested energy. It just so happened that he ran into this battle. Hua Kaijin. Luo Qingchen squinted at the young man in front of her. He was wearing the school uniform. Although there were a few bloodstains on his body, he still looked clean. The first time they met, this young man had helped her out. Although she didn't need it, it still left a good impression in her heart. Qingchen. Hua Kaijin quickly joined the battle. He looked at her and asked, "What is this? Why does it feel different from the zombie sang we met on the way here?" Rank 9 zombie. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, "Now is not the time to explain so much. What ability did you awaken?" Wind Arcana. Hua Kaijin scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Maybe I'm a little dizzy and stupid, so I only awakened a single ability." "You must be very strong compared to the others." Qian Xinai narrowed his eyes and said, "The 4 of us will attack from 4 directions, we have to kill it before it heals its wounds." "It can heal?" "Not only can it, it can heal very quickly." Qian Xinai looked at the armored zombie in front of him and said, "Prepare, go." Chapter 2404. A few minutes later, there was a purring sound. The zombie in front of them finally shattered under the 4 different powers, instantly exploding. A golden crystal core appeared in midair. Everyone knew that whoever obtained this golden nucleus would not only advance by a level, they would also become the strongest Esper in the early stages of the apocalypse. After all, this 9th level zombie shouldn't have appeared. Since it appeared, the things it left behind must be very precious. "How about we ladies go first?" Qian Xinai looked at Hua Kaijin. "If you have any objections, you can raise them." "No, I don't." He shook his head with a smile. "I just helped a little." Luo Qingchen thought about it and felt that it wasn't good. When she wanted to say something, the golden nucleus entered Luo Qingmian's body with a xiao sound. The white light around his body became even more dazzling. In the next second, the white light shone brightly and surrounded him from the bottom to the top. There was a ding sound. The Esper successfully advanced. What's going on?" Luo Qingmian didn't react at all, explaining in a panic, Sis, I'm not." "Humph." There was a soft snort that came from not far away. It was Bai Lianxin's voice of disdain. She arrogantly raised her eyes and walked towards Hua Kaijin while saying, "Some people just like to play tricks behind people's backs. Can't you be a little more tactful if you want to embezzle the crystalline nuclear energy? Is it really okay to do it so openly?" Since she was certain that Hua Kaijin was an Esper, she wasn't that afraid of Luo Qingchen. After all, she and Hua Kaijin weren't just family friends, they were also good friends in school. Now that the apocalypse had arrived, her good friend had awakened an ability, so naturally she would protect her. Of course, she was still a bit scared, so when she stood beside Hua Kaijin, she tightly grabbed his arm. He was deeply afraid that this life-saving talisman would suddenly disappear. Luo Qingqian narrowed her cold eyes and pointed her phoenix dance sword at Bai Lianxin. I'm just giving it to my little brother openly. What does it have to do with you? Have you forgotten how your mother died? Do you want to play multiple choice questions again? Naturally, she knew that Bai Lianxin knew that Hua Kaijin was a paranormal, so she became a little arrogant and unscrupulous. However, anyone with a brain would know who would have a higher chance of winning if it was 3 against 1. You! Bai Lianxin bit her lip. She wanted to say something but was interrupted by Hua Kaijin. As a peacemaker, he said, it's the apocalypse now, everyone should help each other. Qingqian, Lianxin is used to being the eldest daughter. She has a bad temper. You can give in to her. Concede? As soon as Hua Kaijin said those words, her favorable impression of him instantly disappeared. Why should I give in to her? If I want her to die, it'll be as easy as killing a phase 1 zombie. Luo Qingqian was too lazy to explain the reason to Hua Kaijin, but she felt that her tone and words had already explained everything. The next second, she narrowed her cold eyes and continued, I'm keeping her alive because I haven't played enough. She naturally knew that her words would completely change Hua Caijin's opinion of her, but she didn't care at all. Chapter 2405. As expected, Hua Kaijin froze for a moment. In addition, Bai Lianxin was clutching his hand tightly. She looked very scared, which made him frown even more. In his eyes, although Bai Lianxin was a bit willful, she was still his good friend. In the post-apocalyptic world, there were many more people without abilities than people with abilities. Since he had awakened an ability, he should protect his friends. The way Hua Kaijin looked at her allowed her to roughly understand what he was thinking. Really simple, so simple that it made people feel stupid. In any case, it's going to be dark soon. It's too dangerous at night, we can't go anywhere at this time. Hua Kaijin saw that the surrounding atmosphere was a bit awkward, so he changed the topic. In front of us is a villa area. When I passed by, there were a lot of empty places. The Hua family's bodyguards stayed there, so we can stay there for the night. Young master, may I ask if you have any extra food? The people who were originally hiding in the shops came out one after another. Among them, an uncle resentfully said, I just left the supermarket in a hurry, so I forgot to bring food. Don't worry, the villa has a lot of food and supplies. Hua Kaijin politely responded, everyone doesn't need to worry, the Hua family has already started to set up a rescue station to help everyone get through the initial difficulties. Clap, 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 clap. A burst of loud applause sounded. Everyone agreed with Hua Caijin's proposal. But Luo Qingqian, who was standing on the side, didn't say a word. She could be considered as a bystander. In her previous life, she was in the same position as Hua Kaijin. Saviors wouldn't be praised by others, they were just a stepping stone for selfish people to survive. Help everyone get through the initial difficulties of the post-apocalyptic world? Then what about the middle of the post-apocalyptic world? What about the post-apocalyptic world? Ridiculous. She couldn't help but imagine Hua Caijin's end. Would he become a hero revered by thousands, or like her, become a so-called research subject for a doctor? Nephew, let's set off then. Bai Dashan wrapped himself in a windbreaker and said, it won't be good if that monster comes back. The aristocratic circle was small. The Bai family and the Hua family had business dealings, so they naturally knew each other. Uncle, you're here too? Hua Kaijin hurriedly stepped forward and said, come with me. Everyone, follow me. Hua Kaijin was like a wind vane, leading everyone to a certain foothold ahead. It was a villa that looked like Isbek Castle. A flock of crows flew across the dusk sky, making this villa even more eerie. However, everyone didn't seem to think so. Other than the people who happened to go home midway, there were only 3 strangers who followed Hua Kaijin to the villa. An uncle, an aunt, and a young woman. In fact, they were quite smart. At the very least, it was not wrong to follow a doomsday philanthropist when they weren't sure where the safe zone was. There's food and water, and they won't be bitten to death by zombies. Why not kill two birds with one stone? Young master. As soon as they entered the door, two sturdy bodyguards in suits bowed respectfully. In addition to the main entrance, every door in the 4 directions was guarded by bodyguards. It was very strict. Chapter 2406. There are rooms on the 1st and 3rd floors. You can choose whichever room you like. Hua Kaijin said carefully. After you take a shower, you can go to the dining room on the 1st floor for dinner. The chef has already prepared dinner. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, young master. You're our savior. It's our great fortune to meet you in this apocalyptic world. The few of them spoke one after another, praising this savior-like young master Hua to the heavens. In their eyes, he was like a god, shining brightly from head to toe. Young Master Jean, where's the master bedroom? Bai Lianxin looked at her dress with disdain and said, I want to take a shower and sleep. By the way, help me prepare Custine's body wash and Chanel No. 9 perfume. I'll only wear a silk bathrobe and nothing else. When Hua Kaijin heard this, a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. He scratched his head and said embarrassedly, I don't know if the room was prepared. If it wasn't, I'm afraid we can't find it now. He took good care of Bai Lianxin. After all, she was the daughter of a family friend, and they were good friends in class. In the past, she would agree to all his requests, but now it was the apocalypse. What she wanted was no longer a matter of value, but a matter of human life. But I can't use that cheap body wash. Bai Lianxin frowned. Hua Kaijin had no choice but to comfort her. Go to your room and rest. The master bedroom is the first room on the 3rd floor. I'll help you go to the large shopping mall to see if it's for sale. Okay. Young Master Jean is the best, Bai Lianxin said in a delicate voice. She didn't forget to rub his arm. Then she rolled her eyes at Luo Qingchen and walked proudly to the master bedroom. From beginning to end, Luo Qingchen didn't say a word. She also didn't organize Hua Kaijin to go to dangerous places to buy Custine's body wash and Chanel No. 9 perfume. Some people needed to grow up in this post-apocalyptic world. She deeply felt that Hua Kaijin needed to suffer a heavy fall to know what pain was. She went to the 2nd floor to find a room. Qian Xinai and Luo Qingmian followed behind her. The moment she opened the door, the two men didn't plan on leaving. You're not planning on finding your own room? Luo Qingchen blinked and looked at them in confusion. Qian Xinai and Luo Qingmian looked at each other and said at the same time, no. The two of them realized that they had said the same thing at the same time. They looked at each other unconsciously. Luo Qingmian said, I can protect my big sister. After all, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Mr. Qian should find another room. Qian Xinai heard this, but he didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. He put his hands in his pockets and leaned against the wall. Although you're Qing's little brother, you're still a man. Men and women shouldn't touch each other, that should be true. Luo Qingchen felt like crows were flying over her head. His words were quite sharp. You. Luo Qingmian was stunned. She turned her head and waved her hands in front of her. I'm not the same, I'm blind. Pooh. When her little brother said these self-deprecating words, Luo Qingchen couldn't help laughing. Chapter 2407. Actually, she didn't mind the two of them sharing a room with her because something big was bound to happen tonight. When a person was constantly in fear, when death was very close to her heart wouldn't feel so depressed. But once a person reached a safe place, then he would be completely relaxed. At that time, if she felt fear again, she would fall into an irrecoverable situation. Luo Qingchen didn't rest, rather she took a shower and took out a clean navy blue suit. Big sister, where are you going? Luo Qingmian saw that she was about to go out and called out to her, You're dressed so handsomely. Actually, He was more stunned by his big sister's appearance than anyone else, but he could see that she was wearing dark clothes most of the time. Today was an exception, although she looked strangely good. Children shouldn't ask too much. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips into a smile. If you want to ask, you should ask your big sister where I found these handsome clothes. As soon as her voice fell, she quickly went out and headed downstairs. Luo Qingmian still hadn't come back to her senses as she stood there in a daze. Qian Sinai on the side was wiping his wet hair with a towel as he said, "Your big sister has a space creation ability, so my things are all with her." My big sister? Isn't my big sister a fire ability user? Luo Qingmian was suddenly stunned. What is space? Your big sister's fire ability awakened after the apocalypse. What about space? Before the apocalypse, walking out of the villa, Luo Qingchen used the high-tech locator from the Qian family to find the largest store nearby. It wasn't far from them, it was a duty-free store. There was no sign of Hua Kaijin on the first floor. He should have gone to buy things for Bai Lianxin. He really was cute in his stupidity. In that case, on account of the fact that this young man had once spoken up for her before the apocalypse, she would let him thoroughly understand what the apocalypse was. The things he risked his life for might be more important than his own life in the eyes of others. The number of zombies in front of the duty-free shop wasn't many, but it wasn't few either. However, their crystal nuclei had already been taken away. The surrounding buildings had traces of being swept by the wind. Luo Qingchen glanced inside and saw a faint light flickering slightly. She wasn't worried that Hua Kaijin wouldn't be able to defeat the zombies. She just stood there waiting for him. After all, in order for a person to see through another person, what was needed was definitely not rumors and guesses. He had seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears. Hua Kaijin was very fast. He came out of the duty-free shop in less than 10 minutes with a big bag in his hand. In addition to Custine's body wash and Chanel No. 9 perfume, there were also facial masks and skincare products for girls. They were all brands that Bai Lianxin was used to using. In fact, he knew that Bai Lianxin liked him. Perhaps it was because he didn't feel that kind of love for her, so he had always felt guilty towards this daughter of his uncle's family. At school, he would give in to her a lot of things. Although there was no spark of love, at least he treated her like a sister. Seeing Luo Qingchen with her hands in her pockets, standing in front of the duty-free shop waiting for him, he was a little surprised. Why did you come out? Luo Qingchen took out a hat from her portable space and put it on. I'll let you see what the apocalypse is. Chapter 2408. It's St. Petersburg. Bai Lianxin stood in front of the large wardrobe, picking out the clothes she would wear to the banquet after taking a shower. She had attended this kind of banquet with her father before, and she was always the most dazzling one. Today, she had experienced hardships that she had never experienced in her entire life. As the saying goes, things can only move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. This was the end. It was a good thing that the previous owner of this villa had good eyes, so the clothes in the wardrobe were all high quality. She picked out a light blue tuxedo and impatiently waited for Hua Kaijin to come back. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door and her expression slightly changed. She excitedly ran over to open the door while not forgetting to say, "So slow. I've been waiting." But before her voice fell, what entered her eyes wasn't Hua Kaijin, but rather the male god Qian Sinai that she had never been able to conquer. Actually, for Bai Lianxin, she didn't have anyone she liked the most in this life. She openly loved Hua Kaijin in school. 1. It was because being close to Hua Kaijin gave her enough focus, and 2. It was because there weren't any amazing men in that school. Perhaps it couldn't be said that there weren't any, but those men were too easy to capture. The first day she felt something new, the next day men would fall under her skirt. Boring. It was probably because Hua Kaijin never agreed to her that he became her only male god. But that was the modern world. Right now, she was in the apocalypse. and for Qian Xinai to take the initiative to come to her, she felt that it must be a good thing. Looking at the handsome face of the youth in front of her and the expression in his eyes, her lips curled into a faint smile. For some reason, Bai Lianxin felt a burst of nervousness in her heart, and even her heart was beating uncontrollably. But she didn't know that there were two figures standing in the shadows, silently watching this play. "Isn't this classmate Qian?" She lowered her head and shyly tucked her fringe behind her ear. Pursing her lips, she asked, "Is there anything you need from me?" "Qing Qing asked me to tell you that Hua Kaijin classmate was ambushed by an armored zombie in front of the duty-free shop. He is now seriously injured and asked me to take you to see him." "Did he encounter another armored zombie?" Bai Lianxin froze for a moment, feeling very uncomfortable. If Hua Kaijin died, then her situation would become very dangerous. What to do, what to do, what to do? She asked herself the same question 3 times in her heart, but there was still no answer. A few seconds later, she could only smile awkwardly and say, "What's the use of me going if you guys can't deal with the zombies? His injuries are quite serious, perhaps." Qian Xinai gave a slight nod and directly acted. There was a faint liguang in his deep eyes as he said, "This is the last time." After experiencing the scene of the 4 of them working together to barely kill a 9th-rank zombie, she knew just how powerful this armored zombie was. If Hua Kaijin died, her situation would indeed be very dangerous. But if she went, it wouldn't be as simple as being in danger. That would be sending a lamb to the tiger's den. "I think I shouldn't go, so as to avoid causing trouble for you guys." Bai Lianxin blinked her large eyes and said, "If something really happened to him, will classmate Qian protect us for him?" Chapter 2409. Bai Lianxin was stunned as her expression became a bit stiff. She naturally wouldn't go to such a dangerous place to see Hua Kaijin, that was simply going to die, alright? Moreover, although Hua Kaijin met the zombie because he went to buy something for her, the one who killed him was the zombie, not her. If this was the modern world, even if it was under the law, this matter wouldn't be related to her at all. She wasn't a fool, how could she sacrifice herself for someone else? But, in front of Qian Xinai, even if she thought this in her heart, she couldn't directly say it. "I was just a bit surprised." Bai Lianxin's eyes trembled as she said, "Although I'm worried about young Master Hua Kai, I'm just a normal person, different from power users like you. Classmate Qian wouldn't send me to my death, right?" Bai Lianxin thought that her words were tactful enough. After all, if it was in the past, she would have turned around proudly and would not have explained. But because the person she was facing right now was Qian Xinai, she gave an explanation. The apocalypse was very long and no one knew what the future held, but if Hua Kaijin really died, she had to use this chance to win over Qian Xinai. Even if he said he had a master. Even if he said he would only protect Luo Qingchen. Even if his attitude towards her was so cold before. But so what? As long as the hoe was used well, there was no wall that couldn't be dug down. When she was in school, she often made the boys who had girlfriends fall in love with her, so this wasn't a hard thing to do. On the contrary, it was very easy in her eyes. Unhumph. Qian Xinai gave a soft snort as an unfathomable depth appeared in his eyes. No wonder his Qing was so black-bellied towards this woman in front of him. Now it seemed like his Qing was quite kind. If it was him, he definitely wouldn't have let her live for this long. Of course, he knew that she just didn't want her to die so easily. Actually, this was also good. Every day she spent in the apocalypse was another day of torture for a normal person like her. Thinking of this, he couldn't help feeling that his future wife had a very high IQ. Yes, his EQ was also very high. Seeing that Qian Xinai was just silently looking at her without saying anything, she said with a bit of embarrassment, "I don't know where classmate Qian is going next. If young Master Yen can't come back, this place is no longer safe. I've already found a safe zone, I'll be leaving tomorrow." Qian Sinai narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems like you don't want to go with your father." "Yes, yes, yes." Bai Lianxin nodded excitedly. "Because of Luo Qingchen and my mother's tragic death, my father and I have been estranged. Besides, he can't go anywhere without your protection." As for Bai Dashan, she had already decided to cut off all ties with him when they were in the supermarket. What was the use of having such a father? At his age, he could already be considered as someone who had half a foot in the grave. Why did he still choose to kill her? "So you want to follow me?" Qian Sinai narrowed his eyes as his lips curled into a faint smile, leading Bai Lianxin into his trap step by step. He knew that Luo Qingchen and Hua Kaijin were standing not far away. Although he was a bit jealous that his Qing had helped Hua Kaijin see the truth, they had still fought side by side. Chapter 24:10. It was clear that when Bai Lianxin heard that Qian Sinai might bring her along, she was very excited. "Can I?" She pursed her lips and said, "Actually, I felt that you were very special back in school because other than young Master Jean, almost all the boys confessed to me, only you didn't." When Bai Lianxin said this, she deliberately showed an expression of love. She lowered her head shyly and continued, "You may not know, but I noticed you at that time. I always felt that you were particularly attractive." Of course, this unintentional confession was completely made up by Bai Lianxin. She was such a proud person back in school, how could she have noticed the mushroom-headed pimpled boy? "Ha ha ha." Qian Sinai gave 2 taunting laughs. "Don't you feel disgusted saying this?" To be honest, Qian Sinai hated delicate and pretentious women the most in his life. This kind of woman was even more disgusting than a woman with a bad heart. "You! How can you say this about me?" Bai Lianxin was clearly very shocked. She thought that even if Qian Sinai wasn't moved by her confession, he would at least look at her in a different light. But he directly said that she was disgusting. Why did he say this about her? What was wrong with her? How was she inferior to that ruthless Luo Qingchen? That woman who killed her mother could be appreciated and protected by him. Why did she have to be called disgusting? Qian Sinai looked at Bai Lianxin with wide-open eyes and a fierce look on her face, and felt very uncomfortable. He could only help her to this point, so it could be considered a success. Because he really didn't want to face this kind of hypocritical woman, he felt his stomach churning every second. "The 2 of you can come out now." Qian Sinai put his hands back in his pocket and narrowed his cold eyes. "Hua Kaijin, it isn't that I'm looking down on you, but your eyes really aren't that good." When the words Hua Kaijin came from Qian Sinai's mouth, Bai Lianxin felt her heart suddenly skip a beat. "You said, what did you say?" Her eyes popped out and her face turned pale. She raised her right hand to point at Qian Sinai. "How could you lie to me?" The moment Bai Lianxin's voice fell, Hua Kaijin and Luo Qingchen walked out from the shadows. There was a dark red crescent moon in the sky. The moonlight shone on Bai Lianxin's face, making her look very strange. Hua Kaijin clenched her fists tightly. Her silver-white hair looked especially beautiful under the moonlight. With a thud, the shopping bag fell to the ground. Inside the bag were Costin's body wash and Chanel No. 9 perfume, as well as some of her favorite skincare products, which he had bought for his so-called good friend after passing through the checkpoints of the duty-free shop. At this moment, he realized how foolish he had been. Only then did he realize how cheap this woman called Bai Lianxin's love was when she said she liked him. Fortunately, he had never liked her. Fortunately, although he felt embarrassed every time she confessed, he still decisively rejected her. He always thought that if he let down a girl's love, perhaps he should make up for it in other ways, so he always treated her as a little sister. Most of the time, he agreed to her weak requests. Even in the dangerous apocalypse, he didn't reject her. But what did he get in return? Chapter 24:11. Young Master Jean, listen to me. Bai Lianxin anxiously explained, "It's not what you think this is all a trap set by them, they want to drive a wedge between us. Don't you think your explanation is too weak?" Luo Qingchen put her hands in her pockets, shrugged and chuckled. "What a joke!" "You!" Bai Lianxin bit her lips and said, "Don't slander me." "You!" Luo Qingchen imitated her tone and sneered, "Don't provoke me, I have a bad temper, if I can't control my ability, you might already be reported to the King of Hell." She didn't know why, but at this moment, when she saw Bai Lianxin panicking, her face full of hatred but unable to do anything, she felt especially happy. A person falling from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor wasn't scary, what was scary was falling from the 100th floor to the 1st floor. That kind of contrast in one's heart was the most torturous feeling. Bai Lianxin saw the coldness in Luo Qingchen's eyes. Even if she had countless words to say to her in her heart, she didn't dare to say a word. Although she didn't understand Luo Qingchen, she knew that if she didn't have Hua Kaijin as her backing, if she wanted to use her ability to kill her, no one would be able to stop her. So right now, the most important thing to her was still Hua Kaijin. "Big brother Jin, you don't believe me?" She held her chest and screamed with all her strength. This time, she didn't even call him young Master Jin, she directly called him Big Brother Jin. In the past, she liked to call him Big Brother Jin, but after her confession was rejected, she angrily called him young Master Jin. Because Hua Kaijin didn't mind calling him that, over time, she was used to calling him young Master Jin. But now, she called him Big Brother Jin again, she wanted to evoke the first memory between them. The surrounding air suddenly became quiet, until a few seconds later, Hua Kaijin slowly raised his eyes and looked at her coldly. "Yes. I don't believe you. We are classmates. How can you believe them and not me?" With tears in her eyes, Bai Lianxin pretended to be aggrieved and said, "I'm that Lianxin who likes you the most. They're my classmates too." Hua Caijin's voice was cold and decisive, as if he didn't want to give Bai Lianxin any chance, or perhaps he was completely disappointed in her. He looked up at her arrogantly and said, "Also, I only believe in my own eyes." Actually, he was disappointed in his heart. After all, being nice to a person and receiving such a reward in return, anyone would feel suffocated. However, he was also glad that he had seen her true colors in advance. If he didn't personally see it today, he might have held back what Luo Qingchen and Qian Sinai said, but after personally seeing it, he felt how stupid he was. He was so stupid that he needed someone who had nothing to do with him to remind him not to be so stupid. No. Bai Lianxin saw that things had reached a point of no return, so she rushed forward to grab Hua Caijin's arm. Believe me, this matter definitely isn't what you think." She didn't know how to explain it, so she could only use the most common method to stabilize Hua Kaijin. After all, this was the power user she had just pulled in, the only person who would protect her in the apocalypse. In the next second, Hua Kaijin forcefully swung her right hand, and an extremely strong wind instantly sent Bai Lianxin flying 5 meters away. Chapter 24:12. During dinner time, Luo Qingchen didn't go down to eat. Instead, she walked around this exotic castle. When she first entered the door, she felt that something was wrong. This feeling of wrongness did not give her any other feeling of familiarity or joy. Instead, it was dangerous. Because she was really confused, she went to Hua Caijin's room to ask for some details. When she opened the door, he had already changed his clothes. Although he looked a little tired, he seemed to have adjusted his mood. "Can I come in and talk?" Hua Kaijin seemed to have just recovered. He politely made a path for Luo Qingchen and said, "Of course." He made her a pot of fruit flower tea and said embarrassedly, "I didn't have time to collect supplies. Please don't mind." "I won't." Luo Qingchen sipped the tea and said, "It's delicious." "That's good." Hua Kaijin showed a faint smile and said, "Student Luo, why are you looking for me? If it's about Bai Lianxin, you don't have to say more." If I still don't understand, then I'm really hopeless. For Luo Qingchen, he always had the feeling of looking up at her from a low place. She was like the stars in the sky. He could only look up and see her, but he couldn't touch her. That kind of unreachable. About that kind of person, I think student Hua can handle it. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly and said, I want to ask about this villa. What are your considerations for setting it as a safe zone? Probably because Luo Qingchen's question was a bit abrupt, Hua Kaijin froze for a long time and then frowned and said, Isn't a place without zombies a safe zone? Luo Qingchen heard this and her face changed slightly. She frowned slightly and her right hand's fingertips habitually tapped on the table and said, It's not a place without zombies that is a safe zone. In other words, a place without zombies is not necessarily a safe zone. What do you mean? Hua Kaijin looked at Luo Qingchen's frown and inexplicably felt a bit nervous. He took a deep breath and said, Student Luo, why don't you just say it? I don't understand why you're beating around the bush. Before the apocalypse, I heard from the expert about the development and direction of the apocalypse. Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows slightly and said, When I first came in, I saw some things hanging in the dark corners. At first, I thought they were spiders or other animals, but after I looked at them carefully for a long time, I realized that they weren't. What's that? Hua Kaijin raised her eyes and said, I was outside the whole day and didn't have time to observe carefully. I only know that there were no zombies in this villa when I came. Heart. A human heart. Luo Qingchen rested her chin on her left hand and said, I also found intestines on the ceiling of the corridor on the right corner of the third floor. What? Hua Kaijin's expression changed as he said in shock, You're saying that zombies have been here before? It should be a level 3 zombie or above. Luo Qingchen thought for a while and said, If I'm not wrong, it shouldn't have been here before. Instead, this should be a place for them to stay. It seemed that the population of this city was too high, so there were too many deaths. The zombies evolved very quickly. Level 3 zombies already knew how to move in groups and even find a place for themselves to stay and store what they thought was food. Oh my God! So they will come back? Hua Kaijin suddenly stood up and said, I have to inform them immediately. Chapter 24:13. Hua Kaijin was slightly surprised. He thought Luo Qingchen was an easy girl to get along with, but in the next second, he could feel the coldness in her eyes, and killing intent. For Luo Qingchen, there were some things that needed to be explained, because just now, she inadvertently saw a faint green light flash on by Lianxin's head. It was a very faint light that disappeared quickly, but she was sure that it was the sign of an ability awakening. It turned out that Bai Lianxin really had an ability in this post-apocalyptic world. If she hadn't seen it, then it was either a spiritual ability or a healing ability. No matter what kind of ability it was extremely powerful. In the later stages of the post-apocalyptic world, there would be more and more injured people and even ability users. Because of the pollution of water and medical supplies, it would become more and more serious. For example, antibiotics, penicillin, and some other commonly used drugs would be sold for sky-high prices. A bottle of penicillin could even be exchanged for an off-road vehicle and a box of food. In the later stages, drugs were extremely precious, so precious that they had become priceless treasures. Therefore, no matter if it was a spiritual ability or a healing ability, they were all very important in the later stages of the post-apocalyptic world. Just like a character in a game, there were many kinds of attacking characters, but most of the time there was only one healing character. Originally, she thought that perhaps she could keep Bai Lianxin for a while, but now it seemed that the King of Hell couldn't wait to see her. At midnight, the red moon in the sky was slowly covered by dark clouds. There were many rooms in the villa, but there were very few people. Luo Qingchen carefully checked the food storage hanging in the dark corners of each floor. She roughly determined the number of zombies and their rooms. Among them, there were 2 rooms that were more dangerous. The first room was a side bedroom on the first floor. Luo Qingchen let the aunt who originally lived there change rooms. As for the second room, it was the master bedroom on the third floor where Bai Lianxin lived. However, at this moment, Bai Lianxin didn't feel the slightest bit of danger. After Hua Kaijin left, although she was very flustered, she still walked forward to pick up the shower gel and perfume he bought for her after calming down. The things inside were quite complete, but her favorite facial mask wasn't there. While taking a shower, she muttered to herself, "Today, I can only wrong you to wear a cheap facial mask." Christine's shower gel was all over her body. She still smelled like cherry blossoms even after she washed herself with hot water. She put on the light blue tuxedo that she had picked out earlier, sprayed on her Miss Coco, and put on exquisite makeup. Bai Lianxin sat in front of the dressing mirror and looked at her beautiful face in the mirror. She couldn't help but smile and murmured again, "How could the heavens bear to take back such a beautiful face? I want to live. No matter what, I have to live." Her tone was very firm, as if she had already thought of a countermeasure. As for Hua Kaijin, he was in a fit of anger just now. In addition, there were two people fanning the flames in the narration, so he was naturally angry at her. But after all, they had been friends for so many years. When he calmed down, he would naturally find her good side. As Bai Lianxin was thinking, she half leaned on the soft bed elegantly. She ate the chocolate that Hua Kaijin gave her before, and a faint light flashed in her eyes. Actually, she didn't like to eat chocolate, but she was really hungry, so she just ate a few bites. Chapter 24:14. I was wrong before. Can you forgive me? Bai Lianxin, there was nothing wrong with apologizing first. She was such a prideful person, being able to speak humbly to others was her absolute concession. She thought that Hua Kaijin would definitely step down from this stage. After all, he used to accommodate her. However, after a few minutes, her phone didn't ring at all. On one hand, Bai Lianxin was a little flustered, but on the other hand, she was a little angry. She was flustered because there was a possibility that Hua Kaijin was really ignoring her, and she was angry because no one had ever ignored her message. When she was in school, everyone spoiled her like a little princess. At the end of the world, she originally thought that everyone would fight to protect her, and even fight over her. She didn't expect that not only did such a scene not appear, but she was also repeatedly bullied by lowly people like Luo Qingchen. The reason was just because she was a psychic, so she could be superior to others? Ridiculous, ridiculous, really ridiculous. After a few more minutes, Hua Kaijin still didn't reply. Bai Lianxin couldn't hold back her anxiety, and sent another message to Hua Kaijin. Don't go too far. We are friends for a long time, this is so unsightly. Bai Lianxin, since the soft approach didn't work, then she would use the hard approach. Time ticked away, Bai Lianxin held her phone and paced back and forth in the room. In fact, she was more used to her current life, using her phone in a place with a signal, wearing a sexy and beautiful dress, and leaning on a high-end soft couch. She was born to live such a life, and even at the end of the world, she still wanted to live such a life. However, Hua Kaijin didn't reply to her message. Even if danger was approaching bit by bit, and death was approaching step by step, he still didn't care about her. Sometimes people were very cold, but when they didn't have any feelings for a person, then her life and death were no longer that important. 3:30 in the morning. A large group of crows flew over the top of the villa, and the air was filled with a touch of tension. Luo Qingchen didn't sleep, lying on the bed fiddling with her portable space, and didn't forget to take out some snacks that she liked to eat. This so-called space creation ability was really good, it had a large capacity, and the classification was clear. That's all due to the system. The mechanical voice that suddenly appeared really scared her, and the ham in her hand almost fell to the ground. Then as a reward, I will take you to see what is called despair on Earth. After replying to the system, she looked out of the window. A touch of red fog surrounded the entire villa, and even she felt that this scene was exciting. In order to cater to this atmosphere, Luo Qingchen took out a dark red cloak from her storage space. She put a large hat on her head that covered most of her face. This kind of atmosphere, this kind of feeling, really felt a little like a world of black magic, inexplicably made people feel excited. Walking up the stairs on the east side, she saw a lot of zombies along the way. They were all Phase 3 zombies. There was only a 4th-grade zombie walking in front, with a faint green light above its head. Qian Xinai's grandfather had said that the ranks of zombies were in reverse order from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. As for 8th and 9th grade, black and gold. It had to be said, the evolution speed of zombies in the apocalypse far surpassed her imagination. Chapter 24:15. Luo Qingchen asked Hua Kaijin to remind everyone not to make any noise at night. Otherwise, they would have to bear the consequences. At the same time, she told the bodyguards in the 4 directions to withdraw. In front of a Phase 4 zombie, even the strongest bodyguards would be like sheep sent to a tiger's den, as long as they weren't superpowered people. Although she didn't have the heart to save the people from disaster, like Hua Kaijin, she had her own principles. She didn't need to make sacrifices that shouldn't be made. The Phase 4 zombie didn't move very fast. It walked forward while taking the food that was placed in the corner. It started to chew on the heart with its bare hands. Munch, 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 munch. A strange sound spread through the entire corridor of the 3rd floor. She hid in the dark and hid her scent. She couldn't help but smile. Naturally, many people heard the sound of zombies eating hearts, but they all held their breaths in tacit agreement. Only Bai Lianxin's stomach made a rumbling sound. Her face was full of joy. He still hasn't replied to my text. So he knew that I didn't have dinner, so he went to find me something to eat. Bai Lianxin pursed her lips. She chuckled and walked towards the door with small steps. She was still fantasizing about how she would act arrogant to Hua Kaijin later. After all, she sent him 2 text messages in such an embarrassing way, but he didn't reply to any of them. She didn't know that when she heard the sound slowly approaching and suddenly opened the door, what she saw wasn't the face of a beautiful man. Instead, it was only half of his face. There were centipedes all over his face. His whole body emitted a sticky burnt smell. Black blood kept flowing out of his mouth. At this moment, Bai Lianxin only felt a buzzing sound in her head. She didn't have any strength left in her body. Luo Qingchen put her hands in her pockets. She saw the arrogant smile on the zombie's face disappear. She heard the deafening screams. Screams. Ah! Bai Lianxin used all her strength to shout and desperately stepped back. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Some zombies smelled fresh blood, and their originally white eyes were instantly filled with blood. Don't come over here, don't come over here. Bai Lianxin screamed madly. She held her head with both hands and said, Don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me. Her entire body was emitting a green light, which surrounded her in layers. She felt that the power in her body had become incomparably strong. Bang! She suddenly waved her right hand, and the air was filled with a faint green light. 2 of the Phase 3 zombies standing behind the Phase 4 zombie felt their heads become heavy, and their expressions showed that they were in pain. The pain made him want to kill the woman in front of him even more. He wanted to drink her blood and devour her heart. Luo Qingchen, who was standing not far away, narrowed her eyes and said, It seems to be a psychic ability. One of the Phase 3 zombies bit her arm, and the pain stimulated all of her senses. Bai Lianxin tasted something sweet in her mouth, and then she spat out a mouthful of blood. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and watched the zombies tear her gorgeous light blue tuxedo into pieces. She watched as she howled among the zombies. He looked at her arm that had just been bitten. It had miraculously recovered. Chapter 24:16. Once an awakened ability user received a fatal injury, the ability genes in their body would mutate ahead of time. Perhaps at first Bai Lianxin didn't awaken her ability that quickly, but now it seemed that she was about to awaken it. When she saw the green light on her body, when she saw the zombies around her look a little afraid of her, when she saw her eyebrows knit, there were zombies falling down. She laughed, looking up to the sky and laughing so happily. Ha 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 ha. She loudly said, I am an ability user, I am also an ability user. Those people who wanted to harm her, those people who wanted to hurt her. She had finally awakened her own ability. It turned out that the heavens still loved her and cared for her. The things that those lowly people had, she could also have them, and she could use them better and more powerful than them. Luo Qingchen, do you see? Bai Lianxin didn't forget to shout, I am also an ability user, what are you so proud of? Cough cough. In the next second, a cold voice sounded in the air, only seeing a golden light pass in front of her eyes, the exquisite ring's faint light instantly interrupted by Lianxin's awakened astrolabe. Space freeze. Everything around her instantly froze, except for Bai Lianxin. She looked at Luo Qingchen step by step walking towards her, a pair of beautiful eyes filled with a cold light. She also looked at the golden light that fell from the sky, cutting off the astrolabe around her. What did you do? She waved her right hand with all her strength, only to see the originally strong green light dim little by little. I hate it when people call me by my full name. Luo Qingchen raised her chin with her right hand and said, especially when it's someone I hate. Bai Lianxin's entire body froze. She turned her face away and stared at her with wide eyes. Where's my ability? Where's my ability? What did she do to her? Why did she feel that she was originally filled with power, but the moment she appeared, that power completely disappeared? You never had an ability. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes and chuckled, because I won't give it to you. You. Bai Lianxin gritted her teeth and said, Luo Qingchen, you can't do this, you bitch. I can also hear people scolding people. She gently touched her ear and stepped back step by step. In the next second, she quickly disappeared into the night. With a snap of her fingers, everything returned to normal. The zombies rushed toward Bai Lianxin crazily. She kept waving her arms, trying to use her superpower. But the pitiful thing was that her powers had been erased by Luo Qingchen. Qian Xinai's grandfather had said that when a person awakened their superpower, it was when they were at their strongest and weakest. The strong part was that the new power user was very strong and they were very sensitive to everything. But the weak part was that as long as someone destroyed their superpower's astrolabe, that person's superpower would never awaken again. When she put away the exquisite ring, there were layers of golden and green light around it. When she put the exquisite ring on her right hand, she could feel a strange power coming to her. It was like the exquisite ring was absorbing her power. It was a very strange feeling. Is it mental power or healing? Before she could react, a deep voice entered her ears. It came from their family's black-bellied male lead, Great Qian Xinai. I feel that Big Sister is more suited for mental power. There was a familiar sunny voice that sounded. It came from their family's most gentle little brother, Luo Qingmian.